Texans are pushing back against GOP lawmakers who turn their backs on the platform. New Texan Kyle Rittenhouse sued by low-life scum that tried to kill him. The left doubles down on gender mutilation, and the Republican National Convention is returning to Houston in 2028. It's time for some Straight Talk, Texas. I'm Bunker Bob Steinhagen, and this is The Bunker Bob Show. Well, greetings, thrill seekers, music lovers, conversationalists from across the fruited plains of the great state of Texas. I am your host, Bunker Bob Steinhagen, bringing you an hour of unfiltered, unadulterated, and unapologetic conservatism to help make Texas and America great again. And I'm grateful to have you watching today on the Bunker Cam via Rumble, YouTube, or Facebook, and welcome my podcast listeners who are out walking, driving in their cars, or wherever they may be listening via Spreaker, Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Deezer, iHeartRadio, Podchaser, or Podcast Addict. And a lot is going on in the great state of Texas that make it important to really kind of do an overview of what has happened over the last few months and what is happening now that are important for you and for the great state of Texas. Because what's happening in Texas, and as I've talked about on my last two shows last week, last Wednesday and Thursday, I focused on the fact that there are a lot of left-leaning people out there who are attacking our state party chair, and that are really basically supporting those kinds of elected officials that are going to continue to make a bad name for what it means to be a Republican. Being a Republican should mean something, and it does. It means something to me. It means something to the grassroots. But so many of those who are elected officials, especially those who are longtime elected officials who have been around for many, many years and have no concern about losing their seat. They sit in pride and arrogance, and which is why they work with not the Republican Party. They don't work to try to make Texas great by bringing GOP principles. Which, I mean, the point of being a Republican is important because it is good government. And when you read the party platform illustrates how we make America and how we keep Texas great. And so, as you know, I realize there are a lot of people out there who are concerned about how the state of Texas may appear to be turning more and more blue because people are coming in from all over the nation, and they a lot of them don't have the same values we do. But I will argue that most of them actually do. Most of them are fleeing California. They're fleeing the North. The New Yorks. They're fleeing failed government, where government is run amok and where the rights of citizens is subservient to the left-wing wackos that basically make life unbearable and frankly make it impossible to live. The cost of living in many of these areas is outrageous. There is an auction going on here in in my community of McClendon Chisholm for a what is estimated to be a $5 million home, and it is in a little neighborhood called Mira Vista, and so there's a lot of people who are looking at this home And the question is, how hard is it going to be to sell this property? Well, with the number of people who are just flooding into our community and into our state, the answer to that is probably not very difficult. The problem with the house that I'm talking about is it's incredibly modern inside, and it's not something that it's certainly not to my taste. Obviously, you can see this is my studio. This is my taste. The modern look doesn't appeal to me. It may appeal to some people, but the state of Texas basically seeing a lot of people coming in from all over the nation who are fed up, who are sick and tired of being sick and tired. Well, when I was looking at the house this weekend, I ran into someone who was looking to buy the house, to bid on the house. I think the bidding starts at $1.2 million. There's a reserve, which I suspect is the same as the cost of what they tried to sell it for and couldn't. But one of the things that we were talking about, because he lives in Dallas, and he was actually the gentleman told me that his house, which is in the Park Cities, I believe, was basically someone from another country basically came and knocked on the door and said that he would pay twice the value of the home, or more than that even. And it was kind of one of those, what do you do? I mean, when you've got the house is already worth several million, and here's a guy who wants to give him double that. He said, I sold it. And he said, I had 3 weeks to leave. And so he was asking me about the community. I said, well, I think the best thing about this community right now, at least, is that the cost, the tax rate here in my community is about, I think, 13 cents per $1 valuation. And we had a tax rollback, that I helped lead. But the little government in the community that I'm in, those who are on city council like big government, and so they're going to grow the government, and our tax rate's going to grow with it. But right now, 13 cents. He said, I think he said he was paying over $2 per 100 square feet. I don't know that that's true. Maybe it is. I'm not familiar with the Park City of Dallas, but it could be Highland Park. University Park, those areas, the high-end areas of Dallas, very well could be over $2 a square foot. I'd be surprised. I mean, it sounds outrageous to even think about that. But when you think about 13 cents, we are, our little community is the lowest around here. And I think the next community is like 30-something cents or 40-something cents per 100 valuation. My point here is there's a lot of people moving in from outside of the state of Texas who are fleeing the government run amok. The idea that more government is better government, which I continually say is not right, is not best for anyone. Government is not the solution to the problem. Sometimes government is the problem. Anytime someone tells you that that government can do something better than the private sector is someone who has no capacity to understand what the role of government is. Government is, as I've talked about so many times on this show, the role of government is to do the most good for the most people at the lowest cost. And where government cannot meet that standard, government should not act, period. So when you think about what the government, building roads, providing a common defense, providing police and fire protection, those are the fundamentals of what conservatism is all about, and that is where that is the place where government should exist. But outside of that, you get into a very, very sticky wicket. I'm going to be talking about energy. Utilities specifically tomorrow. I'm going to tackle what's going on in our community because it deals with water, and I'm going to highlight some of the lies that are out there on social media and even from our little local government that is attempting to to get into the water business versus a private company, and it's illustrative of what else is happening all over Texas and all over America. I have been shocked. How similar my little community, it is a microcosm of what we see nationally. We have people who are in office, for instance, who have absolutely no regard for conservatism, who have no regard for limited government, and people elect them because they cheat and they basically tell you things you want to hear, but whenever you have a who is running, especially when it comes to me, I ran for city council and lost this just recently, and ultimately it's because there's very little attention given by voters. Voters pay very little attention to what's really happening, and they focus on the soundbite, not on the actual facts of what's happening. So I'm gonna focus on water and energy, in specifically because we have ERCOT in Texas that is basically our power grid is its max again. We dealt with that in Snowmageddon, and now we're dealing with it again with the record high temperatures, and so I'll be addressing that on my show tomorrow. And so as I talk about the reason that people are moving into Texas, they're moving into Texas because Texas offers something that most every other state does not. And that is a more limited government, lower tax rates, a opportunity that other states don't offer. The point is, in all of the states that we're talking about, especially these big cities, Chicago, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., wherever you're looking at these big government, where government basically puts more and more restrictions and more standards on you, more limitations. You're limiting liberty. Whenever you do that, you lose freedom. As liberty expands, as government expands, liberty contracts, as Ronald Reagan used, and that is exactly what's happening in America today. Our state is free, and our state is attractive, as is Florida, for a couple of reasons. One, there's no state income tax here in Texas, and people are attracted to that. Our property tax rate, a lot of people are upset about the property tax rate, understandably so. Don't have an income tax, and so ultimately, no one truly in Texas owns their property. If you don't pay your property taxes, your property can and will be taken from you and sold on the market, and so and the state will get its pound of flesh. So there are some actions being taken by many in especially among the grassroots, and we're seeing some movement starting in even in the state Senate. A few members of the House, but looking at alternatives to the way we fund our government, which is primarily through property taxes, and so we've seen a dramatic decrease in the property taxes lately, and that is, let's see. Yeah, that's not the one I'm looking for. But and I've talked about on earlier shows about the House and Senate's compromise, and how we are how we've increased the what your homestead exemption is from $40,000 to $100,000, which is going to have a pretty significant impact on many of us who own houses, and it's a good thing. So it's not great. It's not the best plan. The best plan is to get rid of property taxes altogether, and there are some plans to do that. And Don Huffines is probably the most outspoken leader of that. Don Huffines, former senator who's been on the show before. He ran for governor, didn't win that, but he got a lot of people listening, and he started that discussion and really got people thinking about what that would look like. And I think Don Huffines is really on the right track for that. The irony of that is I'm a big fan of Don Huffines and his I think it's his brother, little Phil, a little guy who is a complete ass, a complete ass, and an incredibly, well, I'm just going to leave it at that. And I'll probably be talking about the whole Philip Huffines debacle that has happened right here in our community. But Don Huffines, again, strong. He's got a plan to do something about the property tax rate, and it's a good plan. Is there some change made to it? Maybe. I'm not the best person to talk about it. Unfortunately, the late Scott Turnbull and I had talked about it before he died, and Scott liked Huffines' plan, and I think I just regret that Scott's no longer with us, because he would have been a wonderful resource as we kind of ferret through all of that. And so, but bottom line, there are things happening. But what's the most important thing to take in mind, to keep in mind, is that there are a lot of incumbents, arrogant and prideful. And the old saying goes, pride cometh before the fall. Never forget. Now, and I think the best way to explain what I'm about to say here, I think the best way to explain it is when I was at Texas A&M University, and yes, I hear that whoop. Thank you, Jesus. When I was in the Holy Land of College Station, I took a political science class from a professor who, at that time, and this was in the 90s, early 90s, when I was taking this class, and it was right before the Newt Gingrich. Newt Gingrich was starting to gain traction and was basically starting to recruit people to run all over America. And it was his announcement of the contract with America that the professor who had, and by the way, this was common belief among all the professors that I had interacted with at A&M, and even though A&M is a fairly conservative, it's a fairly conservative. I don't want to call it a fairly conservative school, because the education that you get at Texas A&M is no better than any other state-funded school. You're still getting indoctrinated by liberals who have tenure, and but the community itself, those of us who are Aggies, it's an ag school. It's the blue collar school is what most people consider A&M to be, compared to that school in Austin. We call them T-SIPs, where I'll just put it this way: at TU up in Austin, I mean, people celebrate all this transgenderism and all this woke and everything as liberal as you can be. That's TU. At A&M, there is a contingent of those at our school. However, the student body overwhelmingly is rejecting a lot of that nonsense, even though the professors push that forward. But that professor that I'm talking about, the political science professor, told us, and this was a upper level class, basically saying, the fact is, it will be decades before Republicans can ever hope to take control of the United States House of Representatives. Because the legacy of Democrat control of the United States Congress, the House, was just unmistakable. And in his mind and in the professors' minds, there was no way that the contract with America, that Newt and all of these people, there's no way that Republicans would ever gain control of the House. That was, I think that was 93. So 94, I believe, is when the contract with America basically, when Republicans basically took control of the House of Representatives and Newt Gingrich became Speaker of the House. I'll have to check that, but I believe it's 94 that happened. And I'll just never forget how sure that professor was that would never happen. And literally less than a year, it was within the year that he said it. The Republicans took control of the House of Representatives. I had actually was a press secretary, press director of a U.S. Senate campaign that we won. This is in another state. I'd done some work as on presidential advance with someone who was managing a campaign up in Nebraska, and they asked if I could come and help on their Senate campaign, kind of close it out. I had some expertise in certain things, and they wanted my help. So it was the last few months of the election of the campaign, and so I went up there. I stayed there for a little while because I actually met my wife there at church, and so she was finishing up her doctorate degree at Creighton University, and so I stayed a little longer, and then became press secretary of another U.S. senator. All that to say that I will never forget. No, we lost that first Senate campaign, but forget. How I wanted so bad to call that professor back and say, well, can you explain why you were wrong? And I suspect that professor would never admit that they were wrong. So why do I say all of that? I say that because there are a lot of Texas lawmakers who are in office right now who feel as though they can lose their election. Dade Phelan is the first of many of those that I would say. Charlie Guerin is another one. Justin Holland is another one. These are people who believe that they are so entrenched that the people of their districts are they basically believe and trust that the people just don't pay attention to what they're doing. That they can blow enough wind up people's hind end to get reelected again. They are sure that they will not be overtaken by the conservative right. Well, Newt Gingrich, understand, what was the contract with America back on a national stage? It was a conservative platform that told Americans, here's what we're going to guarantee. If you elect us, this is what we're going to do. I suspect Matt Rinaldi, the chair of the Republican Party of the great state of Texas, is probably going to do something similar to that. I don't know that he'll call it a contract with America, but I believe he'll Texas, but he'll do something. Matt Rinaldi is skilled. He actually was a former state representative here in Texas. Incredibly skilled strategist, and he understands, and he understands, I think, better than most how people are responding to what's happening and what has happened over this last legislation. As yes, many victories have been had, but some of the biggest points, some of the biggest the primary legislative ranked in order according to the number of votes that they received by the grassroots delegates of the State Convention of Texas in Houston just a year ago. Those things, many of them, the priority issues, Many of them, the first being no Democrat committee chairs, was basically ignored, and our elected officials scoffed at all of us who believed that that was an important thing. They scoffed at us. They basically wagged their fingers at us. Justin Holland spoke directly to the grassroots and laughed at us. These are people who who are so arrogant. They believe that there's nothing they can do. There's nothing that they can say that will separate them from their beloved constituency. But what happened with Newt Gingrich and what Newt Gingrich did, and those Republicans that they recruited, is, I believe, similar to what is happening right now throughout the state of Texas. Let me give you a couple of examples, and this I get from the Texas Score. That Bandera County GOP censures State Representative Andrew Murr. It reads, the Bandera Republican Party has censured State Representative Andrew Murr of Junction for opposing the core principles of the Republican Party of Texas, citing his role in impeaching Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton as the latest in a list of violations. Republican Party of Texas Rule 44, RPT Rule 44, allows the party to censure a Republican office holder for violating the core principles of the RPT, including the party platform and legislative priorities, 3 or more times during a biennium. Bandera County GOP laid out Murr's voting violations in their censure violations, including in their censure resolution, including voting with Democrats to elect State Representative Dade Phelan, basically, knowing that Phelan would appoint Democrats to committee chairmanships, which obviously violated the Texas legislative priorities. Voting in favor of House Bill 1 Amendment 45 by State Representative Abel Herrero, a Democrat of Robstown, to prohibit the use of appropriated money for school choice programs. The censure says this vote violated RPT's 7th core principle and legislative priority of school choice. And finally, 3, voting in favor of House Bill 1635 by State Representative Dustin Burrows, Republican of Lubbock, to allow the state to interfere with private political party process. This violated the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and 9th core principle, going against a free enterprise society unencumbered by government interference or subsidies, according to the censure. Additionally, according to the censure, this article goes on, and this is Sydney Henry who writes this article. She writes, additionally, according to the censure, Murr, chair of the Committee on General Investigating, has demonstrated a pattern of action demonstrably opposed to the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 8th core principle of the Republican Party of Texas RPT platform. The move to impeach, quote, the move to impeach Ken Paxton effectively seeks to overturn the will of the November 2022 voters, reads the censure. Ken Paxton, as you are aware, unless you've been in a hole, Ken Paxton is be up for he's being impeached before the state Senate next on September 5th, I believe, is when his trial begins in the state Senate. In the state Senate, thank you. And so that will be that has really riled up a lot of conservatives. Because I will say this, and folks, you may be someone who believes in law and order as I do. Say what you will about Democrats, the one thing they do better than any other party is they circle the wagons and they protect their own. It doesn't matter if they broke the law or not. I certainly would not suggest that the Republicans would support the breaking. The problem is there is very little evidence, and if there was that Mr. Paxton actually broke the law, that violated Texas state law, that and by the way, candidates running against Mr. Paxton, they campaigned hard on what they called illegal activity, and it did not stick. Why? Because it was not, in my opinion, and based upon what you're seeing, and I think a lot come out in the trial, but a lot of what you're seeing with Mr. Paxton are things that have very little, if anything, to do with his role in office. And I go back to the point that I made last week, that I don't look to elected officials to be perfect. In fact, I expect them to be flawed. They're flawed because they're flawed, and I believe, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing I did last week, but my point is, I believe that man is born into sin. I believe that there is no such thing as a perfect person, and there are going to be people. Every one of our elected officials is God. They're going to sin. They're going to fall short of the glory of God, and they're going to make bad decisions. The question is, are decisions things that are that violate Texas state law? Based upon what I and others have looked at when it comes to this impeachment, it does not appear that has happened. Notably, the Texas House failed to follow its own precedent in previous impeachment hearings, which traditionally offered due process and defendant representation following the Texas Rules of Evidence, or the eighth principle, continues the censure. The CGI, under the guidance of hired a group of partisan investigators and accepted secondhand and thirdhand testimony gathered by those investigators. They also pointed out that Paxton was not allowed to question witnesses or present evidence of his own during the committee investigation, which they said violates the eighth principle as well. The Madera County GOP censure requests that the state Republican Executive Committee concur with the resolution and impose the full penalties in Rule 44 upon Murr. Penalties would include disallowing Murr from running as a Republican or in the primary election. See, folks, the fact of the matter is, Republicans, the grassroots, is not taking what they have been basically laying down on. We're not taking it anymore, and Republicans, the grassroots especially, is starting to put money behind informing voters, hey, here's what's really happening. Here's what your so-called Republican that you elected to represent you, to represent Republican ideals in the state house. Here's what they actually are doing with that. Information. I mean, the greatest threat to incumbency is an informed electorate, and what's happening, and what I believe is going to continue to happen under the leadership of Matt Rinaldi, is I believe that a lot of the people who think that they're safe are going to come to a realization that they are not safe. And right now, people are being recruited to run in different House districts. They're being recruited, get this, by those grassroots leaders in the Republican Party to run against the incumbent Republicans. Now, this is a big deal, especially if many incumbents like Dade Phelan don't get reelected and are not the nominee for the party. What I think more interesting is when Dade Phelan fails to get the nomination as the Republican, what he does after that. Because I predict, and I would not be surprised, I'm not going to predict it, I would just say I would not be surprised if Dade Phelan came out and endorsed the Democrat, which the media, the left-wing press, the drive-by media, as Rush used to say, they will have a field day with it and talk about what a statesman Dade Phelan is, when he is nothing he is nothing like a statesman. He has nothing in common with a statesman. Continuing with the Texas scorecard, Brandon Waltons reported last week that Texas state representative is naming names when it comes to the legislature's failure to pass certain pieces of conservative legislation, including a ban on Chinese ownership of Texas land and ending COVID vaccine mandates. State Representative Brian Harrison of Midlothian, Republican, made the comments during an interview with the Chris Salcedo show on Tuesday, where he was asked to identify who was responsible for killing legislation by State Senator Lois Kolkhorst of Brenham, Republican of Brenham, that would have prevented hostile foreign countries such as China, Iran, Russia, and North Korea from buying land in Texas. Harrison's first target, guess who? House Speaker Dade Phelan. The Texas Senate passed that bill, he says, and what happened in the Texas House to that bill is what happens to conservative priority after conservative priority after conservative priority. And that is that it goes to one of the Speaker's chairmen. The Speaker is ultimately responsible for every single thing that happens in the Texas House. Let me be very clear about that, said Harrison. Beyond just Phelan, Harrison also pointed blame toward the chairman he appoints to head committees. They know, quote, they know what the Speaker wants and what the Speaker doesn't want, explained Harrison. Harrison noted that the China land deal, Senate Bill 147, was never given a hearing by State Representative Todd Hunter, Republican Corpus Christi, who chairs the House State Affairs Committee. He also listed legislation to strengthen the grid and reduce dependence on Texas on unreliable energy sources as other examples of bills killed under Hunter's committee. Folks, do you realize how much the state of Texas depends on wind energy? You'll be surprised. I'll be talking about that tomorrow, but that's what we're talking about. We've got these energy sources that are, one thing about Texas is we are rich in oil and gas. And one thing about our state legislature is that we are moving more and more away from oil and gas. We've got the Republican holds. Remember, Republican holds the governor's seat, the lieutenant governor's seat, every statewide elected office held by a Republican, and we have a majority in both the House and Senate. Think about that. How is that happening? Harrison said that once you get out of committee, you have to go to another committee called the Calendars Committee. Now, this is key. And there's a Dennis London, who is running against Justin Holland, was on the show and talked about the Calendars Committee and what a mess that really is. And he's right. And by the way, Dennis London running against Justin Holland, who just made got his nut by being elected for the fifth time, which means that he gets a pension for life. So Justin Holland doesn't care if he wins or loses at this point. That's what I would argue. He really doesn't care one way or another whether he wins or loses. And so I think it's going to be a good thing if Dennis can win this, and I think he will win this. I think the grassroots is tired of it. Going back to the Calendars Committee, that this is where it has to go. So once it's out of committee, it moves on to the floor, but it has to go through the committee. And that's where Speaker's handpicked person chooses whether the House can even debate something. Harrison said, why did the Calendars Committee, led by supposedly a Republican Dustin Burrows, why was it so important to him to protect the right for unvaccinated Texans to have their careers destroyed? Some legislation, such as reforming executive overreach, Harrison said, was put on calendar but given no chance to succeed. Quote, Burrows let it out of committee, but he put it literally as the last item on the calendar on the last day, and then they conspired with the Democrats to allow the Democrats to filibuster all of how many bills do you think on the last day of the last hour of the Texas legislative session, how many bills do you think that the Republican-led House of Representatives of the great state of Texas, how many of those bills were there before the House and that were filibustered? last hour, last day of the legislature, if it's 300 bills were filibustered, died, to make sure that Texas never voted on it. But that they can't blame for what, I mean, there's obvious who is responsible for that, and that's our Republican Speaker of the House, Dade Phelan. And just to be clear, I know I've viewers every day understand the way Dade Phelan becomes Speaker of the House is not by getting Republicans to vote for him. The way he becomes Speaker of the House is he makes a deal with Democrats and says, I'll give you this, I'll give you that. What do y'all want? And then all he has to do is find a handful of Republicans, enough to get him over the top, to give him the majority vote. And he gives any of those guys, he'll give them a plum chairmanship on a committee. So essentially, when they go into session to vote for the speaker, it's a fait accompli. They've already made the decision. And if you're a Republican and you dare vote against Dade Phelan, well, guess what? You do not get your committee appointment that you want. You will hardly get any time to speak. You will be basically subjugated to the back of the room and never heard from again. This is Texas politics at its worst. Democrats have a lot of power in the Texas House, not a lick of it, though, that they earned from the voters, said Harrison. They got all their power from the Republican leadership of the Texas House. Democrats can't do anything that the Republican leadership does not let them do. And yet they do a whole lot of killing of countless conservative bills, and they are allowed to pass liberal government expanding bills every single day in the Texas House, because when you're in the Texas House, the Democrats win, even when they lose the ballot box, and it's past time for that insanity to stop. Folks, I'm not saying that, I'm not predicting that conservatives are going to have a landslide this next year. But I am saying it is very possible that we are able to get rid of a lot of long-term incumbents, and we can make a change. But that change can only happen if we get conservatives in office. Those people who are in my community, and I continue to tell people, you've got to support Dennis London. You've got to support people, the candidates who are going to represent us, not people who are going to basically criticize and ridicule those of us who are in the grassroots. Here, and you know, the other thing to think about, and this is important, is there was a lot of good that came out of the legislative session. So don't get me wrong. And again, I don't think that I am. I know I'm not trading the good for the perfect, as Milton Friedman always warned. I'm not doing that. The fact of the matter is, we're talking about fundamentals of conservatism, and I realize that there are different positions that people take. A great example is the school choice issue. I'm a school choice guy. I'm a voucher guy. But there's a lot of conservatives who are not. A lot. The Eagle Forum is against school vouchers, is against school choice. How does that happen? How is that possible? So my point is that it is not that these are people who are who have to agree with me 100% of the time. My point is, we're talking about major issues, and what Harrison is focusing on is the fact that the Democrats are literally running our state legislature when it comes to key bills that need to be passed, and more importantly, the finance issue, the finance pieces of our government, because government is not cheap. We continue to add program after program. We continue to expand the size of government, and as I said earlier, as Ronald Reagan, as government expands, liberty contracts. To be careful about what we see there. So I'll be focusing a lot on the legislature and on this legislative the election season here in Texas, and looking for those conservatives who are running against these lifelong squish Republicans. They're a lot of people call them rhinos. They are in some ways, but they're just squishes. Ultimately, they don't hold up to anything. Well, in another report, this is also interestingly by the Texas Scorecard that came out today, that state that on August 25th, 2020, 17-year-old Rittenhouse shot 3 men, killing 2 in self-defense during a Black Lives Matter protest in Kenosha, Wisconsin. This report is by Sidney Henry. Now, the estate of Joseph Rosenbaum is suing Rittenhouse, Kenosha officials, local sheriff's departments, and the city of Kenosha, the city of West Allis, and several other counties for compensatory and punitive damages for the wrongful death of the scumbag Rosenbaum. During the Kenosha incident, Rosenbaum confronted. I watched that trial. I watched the facts of that case, and clearly, Rittenhouse was acting in self-defense. There's no question about it. You often have to put yourself in Rittenhouse's position. What would you have done? And the left's answer to that is, well, I wouldn't have had a semi-automatic gun with me. I wouldn't be carrying an AK-47. I don't think it was the AK he shot him with. Their point is, well, he shouldn't have had the gun to begin with. And my point is, if he hadn't had the gun, Kyle Rittenhouse would be dead, and not this Rosenbaum idiot, this scumbag. And so Rittenhouse is now basically has moved to Texas and is looking to attend the Holy Land. He's living in the Holy Land or right around the Holy Land, and is hoping to attend the greatest university on the planet. And that, of course, is Texas A&M University. Are there any other? I don't think so. I don't think there's any. That's just not debatable, right? That's something that all of us can agree on. I love my TSIP brothers and sisters, but I love being an Aggie more. I got to tell you, the great thing about being an Aggie is you can never take yourself too seriously. Yeah, you keep the emails coming and tell me what an awful school A&M is. I will tell you that A&M sends more kids to Dallas Theological Seminary than any other university in the state of Texas. And in fact, I do work with them. I don't know that there has been a TSIP come to Dallas Seminary in, I think, the last 4 years. So I wonder why. Okay, I don't know that that's true. I don't actually have those numbers, but we were talking and something to that effect came up. Anyway, I want to talk a little bit about the left's push and doubling down on gender mutilation. And it's interesting that if you've been keeping up with what's happened with Jordan Peterson this last week, the courts have ruled that his university where he teaches and colleges that he teaches and the government has that he has the right to freedom of speech, just not all speech. So it really is akin to kind of what I see here in Texas as well. We have these little mayors and city council who say, yeah, we believe in free speech, but not all speech. And we don't want to hear, or school boards, and we don't hear certain things, or you have 5 minutes, or you have 3 minutes to speak. And let's limit your time so that you have no time to speak. I believe in free speech. And so when people say you believe in free speech, how can I can say that because I can say it with integrity, because when I was a mayor of our little city, I got rid of time limits on citizen comments, and I let anyone speak about whatever they wanted to speak about for as long as they wanted to speak, because I believe in free speech. So if you're one of those, if you're an elected official and you say you believe in free speech, but you limit the time that people can speak, and I realize what people are going to say, well, then people could go on and it could be an all-night meeting. Well, the fact of the matter is you can set time limits in a general case. Basically say, we ask that you keep it to 5 minutes. If you need more time, just ask for it. And if you're making a cogent argument, if you prepared a comments or a statement, my goodness, why wouldn't you want to allow citizens who have time and effort into a presentation or into comments, why wouldn't you allow them to say their piece? In most cases, the people who are being restricted from freedom of speech here in the United States, here in Texas, here in Rockwall County, here are not the leftist wackos. They are the conservatives who simply are looking for limited government. Jordan Peterson, of course, is required to go through social media training or something like that, and he can, even though if he loses his license, there's 3 or 4 other organizations that are willing to in different areas of Canada that are willing to give him to relicense him. So it's not a big deal. But for him, but the point that he's making, and this is what I love about Jordan Peterson, is that he is planning to go through this little process with, go through the little steps as they re-educate him, and he's going to video it, he's going to tape it, he's going to share what it is that they're doing. And the fact is, Jordan Peterson, one of the things that he's being accused of and is fat shaming people. There was a plus size. There was a fat girl on the Sports Illustrated cover of the swimsuit issue of the cover, and he basically said this is not beauty, and that apparently was okay for him to say. So even though beauty is a very subjective thing, you cannot say be subjective or share your subjective opinion, because it violates what they believe is objective truth, and that is that fat people are beautiful. And I don't know how many people are attracted to fat people. I doubt very many people are attracted to me, right? I have gotten way overweight, and yes, I am starting to exercise more and eat less. And so, yes, my life is a little less happy and more miserable. But I realize for my health, I've got to lose some weight. I've got to start exercising more. And I have been doing that for the last month now. And, 2 months now. And it probably doesn't show. But the fact is, I'm not beautiful. People don't see me as beautiful, but and maybe there are some idiots out there that do. My wife does, okay? But, she's not all that smart anyway. So I'll just say that. I mean, even though she's got a doctorate and stuff, she's married me, she's stuck. So what else is she going to do but say she likes the way I look? And I love that song. I'm trying to keep my wife from figuring out. She married up and I married way, way down. And anyway, that song is akin to what I have experienced in my marriage. I've got a beautiful wife, and it's funny. We both just turned, we're about 3 months apart. We both turned 54. And one of my daughter's friends was asking, well, how old are your parents? And this was just 2 weeks ago. So it was right before my wife's birthday. And she said, well, my dad just turned 54. My mom is about to turn 54. She goes, your mom is 54? She goes, she looks like she's 34. And I told Kayla, I said, I know she does. People have mistaken my wife for my daughter, and I love it. I married my trophy wife, and in every way, shape, manner, and form. And I just love to stick to people who are stuck in marriages because they married somebody for their looks or whatever, and they end up, and that's not why Michelle and I married each other, but that's for another issue. I mean, we see the world very similar, in a very similar way, and that's what's made our marriage work so well. But I do want to go back to this whole thing, and so going back to Jordan Peterson, he's talking about this whole gender mutilation, and this child gender mutilation ban set to go into effect despite the ACLU's lawsuit. Now, Emily Medeiros of Texas Scorecard. I've got other sources on these things too, and it doesn't look like I'm going to be able to get to RNC convention, but I'll do that on another show. But basically, despite a Travis County District Judge ruling in favor of ACL Texas lawsuit against a Texas law banning child gender mutilation as part of the legislative priorities of our legislator and the legislative session. See, I told you there are some good things that came out of this. The law is set to go into effect at the beginning of next month while the state appeals to the Texas Supreme Court. On Friday, District Judge Maria Cantu Hexel of the 53rd District Court of Travis preliminary injunction, which would temporarily allow children to continue access to gender mutilative surgeries and cross-sex hormones. Jordan Peterson highlighted the fact that this would be child abuse in most countries, and he said it will be in a few years. There's not a single person who's going to be supporting this. Not all the people in the medical communities and political. There's not anyone who will touch this one with a 10-foot pole, and they will repudiate any of those who advocated, or if they were one of those who advocated for it, they will have amnesia and say, well, I never really approved it. I wasn't saying, I was focusing on the rights of parents, not on mutilating children. It's going to be this nonsense, but Peterson's right. In a matter of years, there will be no one who will dare touch this and will be supporting this. And here's another interesting, that this is, again, Emily Medeiros writes another article last week that Texas biology professor fired for teaching sex is determined by Y chromosomes. As issues in higher education continue to be uncovered, a biology professor at a taxpayer-funded Texas community college was allegedly fired for teaching his students that sex is determined by X and Y chromosomes. Dr. Johnson Barkey has taught human anatomy and physiology at St. Philip's College in San Antonio to more than 1,500 students since 2003. In his 20 years of teaching, he never received any complaints. Barkey states in his lecture that when a sperm a zygote is formed, and life starts when the zygote begins to divide, not when a baby is born. However, that was not what pushed students to complain. In November 2022, 4 of Varsky's students walked out of his classrooms after he stated that sex was determined by X and Y chromosomes. Folks, when you have people who are more than the pro-murder, pro-abortion wackos out there who are going to die on the if we don't say that sex is determined, is not a scientific thing that you can do whatever the heck you want. That we've kind of jumped the shark as a society, haven't we? That's a pretty dangerous thing, but that's where we are today, and that's kind of what we have to kind of look forward to as we move forward. So with all of that, I want to say that there is a lot of things that we will try to do as we move forward to try and protect children, protect them from mutilating themselves, and this idea that a teacher, a professor, someone who has been around for a long time can't say that, can't state something that is scientifically valid is really shocking, and it should be shocking to everyone. frankly. So that is that's basically it for today. I'm run out of time, and I want to thank you for being with me today. Something's wrong with my music, my music, but that's okay because we really don't have much time to. Anyway, I am grateful that you were with me today. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. I hope that you have a very blessed day. Bye-bye.